It was a quiet morning, until the roar of an engine cut through the hush of a rundown neighborhood. A sleek black luxury SUV pulled to a stop right in front of a tiny, weathered old house. Neighbors peeked out their windows and whispered to one another, wondering who these strangers had come all the way to this poor area to find. The car doors swung open, and several men in sharp suits stepped out. They asked the locals a single question: "Excuse me, does a waitress named Amika live here?" Now come along and dive into this heartwarming tale. See how one small act of kindness led to an incredible surprise reward. Amika was always up long before the sun rose. It was 3 in the morning, and she was wide awake. Rain had poured non-stop all night, and water kept dripping steadily from her broken roof. She sat up gently, set a bucket under the leak, and dragged her thin straw mat over to the only dry spot in the room. Lying back down, she stared at the stained ceiling and murmured helplessly, "It's leaking again." Dealing with the dripping roof had become her nightly routine whenever it rained. She lived frugally, scraping together every penny to fix the damage, but her small paycheck made progress painfully slow. Even so, she held fast to her resolve. "I'll save enough this month to finally repair the roof for good." By dawn, she was already at the roadside diner where she worked as a server. The place was as loud and busy as ever, filled with the clink of dishes and customers calling out their orders. "Amika, table 3 needs their food," the owner shouted. "On my way, ma'am," she replied right away. She rushed back and forth, carrying trays between tables without a single break. That same morning, an elderly man stood at the diner's entrance holding an empty plastic plate. He lingered by the door and peered inside. The other servers bustled around, rushing meals to guests. The old man's eyes followed them, hoping someone would notice how hungry he was, yet nobody paid him any attention. A few customers caught sight of him, only to quickly look away and pretend he wasn't there. Everyone else kept eating, acting as if the frail man at the door didn't exist at all. The elderly man swallowed hard to soothe his dry throat and gripped his plate tighter, but he refused to leave. Soon enough, Agatha, the diner's owner, stepped out from the kitchen. Folks around the neighborhood knew she had a short temper and would never let anyone disrupt her business. People said she ran her restaurant with an iron fist. When she spotted the old man, her face darkened instantly. Without a word, she grabbed a large bowl of cold water and marched straight over to him. "What are you doing hanging around here, old man?" she snapped. "Are you trying to scare off my customers?" The old man spoke in a weak, shaky voice. "Please, I just need something to eat." "Get out of here now," Agatha cut him off. "Stay any longer, and you'll regret it." The elderly man froze, his fingers trembling around the plate. He wanted to beg for mercy, but the words never came out. Just then, Amika walked out of the kitchen carrying a tray full of food. She heard the commotion and stopped to watch. Before she could process what was happening, she watched Agatha dump the entire bowl of cold water over the old man's head. Frigid water streamed down his face and soaked his simple clothes completely. He hung his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Amika stood frozen in place, and the tray in her hand suddenly felt unbearably heavy. The whole diner went dead silent. Every eye turned toward the doorway. Some people snickered, while others watched with cold indifference. Anger welled up inside Amika, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Her fingers tightened around the tray's edge. She wanted to step forward and defend the old man, but she didn't dare say a word. She knew how cruel Agatha could be. One wrong comment would cost her the only job she had. Slowly, the elderly man turned to leave, his steps unsteady and weak. After walking a short distance, he paused and glanced back. His eyes met Amika's. There was no anger or bitterness in his gaze, only a deep, unreadable emotion that made her uneasy. They stared at each other for a moment, then he turned and vanished down the street. Agatha smoothed her apron and took her seat as if nothing had happened, then snapped at the stunned Amika. "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and serve the food." Amika and the other servers hurried back to work, but the scene she just witnessed played over and over in her mind. When her shift ended that evening, she dragged her tired feet home. A full day of hard work had worn her out completely. As she walked along the road, she noticed someone sitting on the sidewalk. She paid no mind at first, but slowed down after a few steps, struck by a strange sense of familiarity. She leaned in for a closer look and approached cautiously. It was him, the same elderly man who'd been humiliated at the diner that morning. He sat on the curb clutching the same plastic plate, head bowed, looking even weaker than before. Amika hesitated across the street. She looked away and kept walking, but her steps grew slower and slower. She couldn't find peace in her heart. She thought back to how he'd begged for food at the door, how cold water had been poured over him, how he'd endured it all in silence. She squeezed her purse tight. Inside was the last bit of cash she'd set aside to buy groceries for her own simple dinner. She took a few more steps, then stopped, arguing with herself. "If I skimp on ingredients tonight, I can still make a decent meal." She shook the thought away. Life was hard enough, she shouldn't cut corners on her own meals too. She kept moving, still dragging her feet. After a moment, she made up her mind. "I get paid soon. A little sacrifice now won't hurt." She turned around and quickened her pace, whispering to herself, "If I leave him like this, I'll never sleep well tonight." She slowed down as she neared his spot spot only to find it empty. She glanced left and right, scanning the area, but he was nowhere to be seen. Dusk was falling, and crowds of people passed by, yet the old man was gone. Amika stood there for a moment and let out a soft sigh, silently hoping he'd find something to eat that night. She double-checked the surroundings, then continued on her way home. The next morning, Amika showed up for work bright and early as usual. She tied on her apron and got right to work, but her mind was elsewhere. As she carried trays between tables, her thoughts kept drifting back to the old man, Ogbonna. She pictured him standing helpless at the diner's entrance, enduring humiliation without a fight, and the strange look in his eyes before he left. Even when customers spoke to her, she had to snap herself back to focus. Server, can I get another drink? A customer called out. Right away, sir, she replied. She picked up her pace to keep up with her duties, but a heavy weight lingered in her chest. When lunch break rolled around, all the staff gathered in the back to eat. Amika stood up suddenly with an idea and walked straight into the kitchen. The diner's cook, a middle-aged woman, was busy plating food for the employees. Amika, come get your lunch, the cook said. Amika hesitated for a second and spoke softly. Ma'am, could I get my meal to go instead? The cook paused and looked at her, confused. To go? Why? Amika forced a faint smile. It's just a personal thing. The cook narrowed her eyes and teased her. Silly girl, what are you up to now? Nothing at all. Please, just do this for me, Amika pleaded gently. The cook shook her head and packed the food into a takeout container before handing it over. Alright, here you go. Thank you so much. Amika put the meal in a plastic bag and stepped out of the kitchen. She kept a close eye on the diner, then walked over to a table near the exit. Bending down as if to wipe it, she quietly slipped the bag under the table, then picked up a cloth and started cleaning the surface. Her eyes darted around constantly, watching and waiting for the right moment. Customers chatted at their tables, and servers hurried back and forth with plates. Agatha sat in her usual spot, keeping a close watch on everyone inside. Amika wiped the table slowly to kill time, her heart racing. Not yet, not now, she told herself. All at once, Agatha's sharp voice cut through the room. Who's taking care of this order? The entire diner fell quiet. Everyone turned to look. One server froze, completely caught off guard. You, get over here right now, Agatha shouted harshly. All eyes shifted to the pair. Amika seized her chance. Without hesitation, she bent down to grab the plastic bag, stood up straight, and headed for the door. She started at a calm walk, then sped up. In seconds, she was outside the diner. The scorching midday air hit her face. She held the bag tight and whispered, I hope he's still here today. She hurried around the corner and scanned the road ahead. No one was there. She kept walking, checking both sides of the street, but there was no sign of him. When she reached the exact spot where she'd seen him the day before, she stopped in disappointment. Her shoulders slumped as she looked around once more. He was gone. She let out a deep breath. All that effort for nothing, she thought. Weariness washed over her, not just physical tiredness, but a deep sadness in her heart. She turned to leave, but something caught her eye. She squinted and looked across the street. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. She checked for oncoming traffic, then rushed across the road. She slowed down as she approached. It was Ogbonna, sitting in the same spot, still holding his worn plastic plate, weak and frail as ever. Good afternoon, sir, Amika greeted him warmly. The old man lifted his head, and their eyes met again. This time, he didn't look away. Amika held out the plastic bag. Please take this. Ogbonna stared at the bag, then back at her, and didn't reach for it right away. Is this for me? Yes. It's food, she said. He still hesitated. Why are you giving this to me? Amika shifted her weight and answered honestly. I saw what happened here yesterday. My boss treated you terribly, and my heart went out to you, but I didn't dare speak up. If I had, I would have lost my job on the spot. Ogbonna watched her steadily, his face showing no emotion. Amika spoke a little faster. This is my lunch, but I think you need it far more than I do. I'll be just fine. She held the bag out closer. Please, take it. Ogbonna slowly reached out and took the food, never breaking eye contact. If you give me your lunch, you'll have nothing to eat this afternoon. Amika gave a soft, quick smile. I'll manage. A short silence followed, then he spoke again. What if helping me gets you in trouble? The question caught Amika off guard. She frowned slightly. Don't worry about me. Right now, you need to eat. Ogbonna nodded slowly, as if committing her kindness to memory. Amika glanced toward the road, looking anxious. I have to go now. They'll start looking for me soon. She stepped back a couple of times. Please eat it while it's still warm. Ogbonna said nothing, just watched her leave. Amika turned and hurried back to the diner, nearly running. Her heart was pounding. I hope no one saw that, she mumbled. She slowed down as she neared the building, composed her expression, took a deep breath, and stepped back inside. The place was still loud and bustling. Agatha was still scolding the other server. Amika fixed her apron and tried to calm her breathing, when a voice called her name. She froze and turned slowly. It was Azuka, another server. Azuka stood beside a table with her arms crossed, a cold, unfriendly smirk on her lips. She sized Amika up for a moment, then glanced at her empty hands. Where did you just come from? She asked. Amika hesitated. Nowhere. Azuka stepped closer, her tone calm but firm. Nowhere? I saw you walk out with a plastic bag during the break. Where is it now? She stared straight into Amika's eyes and lowered her voice. Let me warn you, Amika, I've got my eye on you. Make even the smallest mistake, and you'll pay for it. Amika's chest felt tight, but she didn't show any fear and stood her ground silently. Azuka turned away, grabbed a tray, and went back to work as if nothing had happened. Azuka had disliked Amika from day one. Amika was a hard worker, always praised by the boss and the customers. Guests loved her and often left tips too. Azuka had once been the most popular server, the center of everyone's attention, until Amika was hired. Pushed to the sidelines, Azuka grew deeply resentful of Amika for stealing her spotlight. Amika picked up her tray and got back to work, pushing the threat out of her mind. She was just relieved her secret act of kindness hadn't been discovered. That night, Amika headed home exhausted after another long shift. Her small house was quiet. Suddenly, low thunder rumbled in the sky. She looked up at her damaged roof. Another louder roll of thunder echoed. Amika closed her eyes and sighed, her heart sinking. She knew exactly what was coming. Moments later, rain started to fall. What began as a light drizzle quickly turned into a heavy downpour. Within minutes, water poured through dozens of cracks in the roof. Amika jumped to her feet and whispered in despair, "Not again." She rushed around the room, setting out bowls and basins under every leak to catch the dripping water. More spots started leaking, and soon the floor was covered with containers catching rainwater. She sat down on her mat and let out a long sigh. "When I get paid at the end of the month, I'll add the money to my savings and fix this roof once and for all," she told herself. Just then, she heard water dripping right where her mat had been. She quickly moved it to another dry corner and stood in the middle of the room, staring at all the bowls and puddles covering the floor. Frustration washed over her. The next day at the diner, business went on as usual. The place was noisy and packed, with customers ordering non-stop. Amika worked quietly. When lunch break came around again, she walked into the kitchen. The cook was already handing out meals to the staff. "Amika, grab your food," the cook said. Amika walked over and whispered, "Ma'am, can I get my meal to go again?" The cook stopped and frowned. "You did this yesterday. What's going on with you?" Amika forced a small smile and said it was just personal business. The cook sighed and agreed, packing the meal into a takeout container and handing it over. "Here you go. Thank you so much." Amika put the food in a plastic bag, waited until everyone was distracted, then slipped out of the diner. The sun blazed overhead. She walked quickly and scanned the area. When she reached their usual spot, she saw Agbana, and he looked worse than before. He could barely sit upright, his head hanging low, his body weak. Amika approached him. "Good afternoon, sir." Agbana lifted his head slowly. "Good afternoon," he replied, his voice faint. Amika frowned with concern. "Are you feeling okay?" He shook his head weakly. "I have a fever. I'm completely worn out." Amika quickly handed him the food. "Please eat this first." He took the meal slowly. "Thank you, child." Amika watched him for a moment and asked, "Have you taken any medicine?" He shook his head. "No, I don't have money for medicine." Amika fell silent, lost in thought. She looked at him again. "How long have you felt this sick?" "Just since this morning," he answered. Amika pressed her lips together, worried. This isn't good. She knelt down, thought hard, and made up her mind. "Don't worry, I'll figure out a way to help you." Agbana looked at her but said nothing. Amika turned and headed back to the diner, her steps slow and her heart heavy. "That savings is only for fixing my roof," she thought. She remembered the rainy nights, the constant dripping, the bowls scattered all over her floor. "If I spend that money, I definitely can't repair the roof this month." She paused, then another thought crossed her mind. "But if I do nothing, his condition will only get worse." Amika closed her eyes briefly and kept walking. Back at the diner, she picked up a tray and kept serving customers. "Here's your food, sir." "Thank you." Still, her mind was elsewhere. "I have to do something. I can't leave him like this." After working for a while, she worked up the courage to go find Agatha. "Ma'am," she spoke up. Agatha looked over. "What is it?" Amika asked if she could leave work a little early that day and gave a reasonable excuse. Agatha studied her closely, asked a few questions, then finally nodded. "Fine, you can leave early." Amika thanked her quickly and rushed out of the diner. She hurried straight back to where Agbana was sitting. "Sir," she called gently. He looked up. I'm taking you somewhere. Can you stand? Ogbonna tried to get to his feet but struggled badly. Amika immediately stepped forward and supported his arm. I've got you. Take it slow. She helped him walk step by step to a small pharmacy nearby. The pharmacist looked them over. What seems to be the problem? He's really sick, Amika explained. Could you check him out? The pharmacist nodded and gave him a quick exam. His expression turned serious afterward. He has a high fever. Amika's heart sank. I'll write a prescription for some medicine. He'll be fine soon, the pharmacist said. How much will this cost? Amika asked. The pharmacist told her the price, and Amika fell silent. The total was far higher than she'd expected. She slowly pulled out her debit card, the card holding every penny she'd saved for roof repairs. She stood frozen for a moment, then handed the card over. Minutes later, the pharmacist handed over the medicine. Make sure he takes these as directed, and he'll be good to go. Amika nodded. Thank you. She helped Ogbonna stand again and walked him out of the pharmacy. Where did you get the money for this? Ogbonna asked. Amika looked at him. I'd been saving it to fix my leaky roof. Ogbonna frowned. Then why spend it on me? Amika let out a soft breath. I couldn't stand by and watch you get sicker and sicker. Silence settled between them. Ogbonna stared at her for a long time before speaking. Thank you. You have a truly kind heart, child. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Amika shook her head. It's all right. She walked him back to his usual spot and stood up. I have to go now. Please take your medicine on time. Ogbonna nodded. I will. Thank you again. Amika gave a small nod and turned to leave. Ogbonna watched her go in silence, his eyes filled with thoughts far beyond the moment. Amika had no idea that this choice would soon change her life forever. The next day during lunch break, Amika grabbed her takeout meal once more. She glanced around carefully, then tiptoed out of the diner. I'll be quick, she told herself. She walked fast, her mind only on Ogbonna. What she didn't know was that Azuka had been watching her every move from inside the building. Azuka saw Amika leave, waited a few seconds, then quietly followed from a distance. She hid behind walls and trees, making sure she stayed out of sight. Amika reached their usual spot and found Ogbonna sitting there, still weak. She hurried over. Good afternoon, sir. Ogbonna lifted his head. Good afternoon, child. His voice was stronger than the day before, though still faint. Amika smiled a little. You look a bit better today. He nodded. I feel a little stronger, all thanks to you. Amika shook her head modestly. It's nothing, sir. Ogbonna looked at the food in her hands. You brought me food again? Yes. Please eat. He took the meal slowly. I don't know what I would have done without you, child. Not far away, Azuka hid behind a wall and pulled out her phone. She held it steady and snapped photos of Amika handing the food to the elderly man. A malicious smile tugged at her lips. You're done for, Amika, she whispered. She didn't stay any longer and slipped away quickly. Amika checked her watch. I have to head back now. Ogbonna nodded. Thank you once more. Amika smiled softly and left. When she returned to the diner and picked up a napkin to wipe a table, someone stepped up beside her. It was Azuka, her face calm. She leaned in and spoke in a low voice. I finally figured out your little secret. Amika froze. What secret are you talking about? Azuka slowly pulled out her phone and showed her the photos. Amika's eyes went wide, and she couldn't find a single word to say. Azuka leaned closer. So the old man my boss chased away is the same person you've been sneaking food to from this diner, isn't it? Trying to make yourself look better than her? Amika shook her head frantically. No, that's not what this is about. Azuka smirked faintly. Really? I'm going to tell her everything. Panic washed over Amika at once. She grabbed Azuka's hand quickly. Please, Azuka, don't do this, she begged quietly. I was only trying to help him, that's all. Azuka tilted her head, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. She stared right at Amika. This kindness of yours is going to cost you your job. Fear flashed across Amika's face. Azuka laughed mockingly. You'd better start thinking about how to save yourself now. With that, she turned and walked away without a single backward glance. Amika stood rooted to the floor, her heart sinking completely. She knew trouble was on its way. That evening after work, she walked home with a heavy heart, unable to calm her racing thoughts. She tossed and turned all night, terrified of what would happen once Agatha found out the truth. The next morning, she arrived for work early and reached for her apron when a loud voice stopped her. Amika turned slowly to face Agatha, whose expression was hard and eyes blazing with anger. Do you think you're better than me? Amika froze. She glanced around and saw all the other staff staring at them. Agatha stepped forward. You play the saintly good person, and I'm the cruel villain, is that what this is? Her voice rose sharply as she drew near. The very man I kicked out of my restaurant is the one you've been sneaking food to behind my back. Her tone turned icy with rage. Amika shook her head quickly. No, ma'am, it's not like that. Agatha let out a cold laugh. Not like that? That food you gave away came straight from my kitchen, didn't it? The entire diner fell silent. Everyone could only hear Agatha's furious voice. She took another step forward. word. I want you gone before I count to 5. Amika dropped to her knees right away. Please, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I meant no disrespect. But Agatha refused to listen, her face cold and unyielding. She called out, Azuka. Azuka stepped forward slowly. Yes, ma'am. Go get a bucket of water, Agatha ordered sharply. The whole place went dead silent again. Even the customers stopped eating. No one dared to speak. Azuka turned and walked into the kitchen. Amika looked up in terror. Please, ma'am, she pleaded again, her voice trembling. I beg you. Quiet, Agatha snapped. I'm going to count to 5. Her eyes locked onto Amika. If you're still here when I finish, she trailed off and nodded toward Azuka, who had returned carrying a full bucket of water. Amika's eyes widened in horror. She stumbled back, grabbed her bag, and ran out of the diner as fast as she could. That was how Amika lost her job. She walked home quietly, with no paycheck and no work to go to. Her dream of fixing the leaky roof was shattered. Her eyes stung with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She lay alone in her small house for a long time. Later that afternoon, she stood up, and her thoughts drifted back to Ogbonna. She worried he had no food and no medicine to get better. I hope he's okay, she whispered. She walked into her tiny kitchen and cooked a pot of rice. She ate just a few spoonfuls herself, then packed the rest into a takeout container. She headed to their usual meeting spot, but Ogbonna was gone. She scanned the area and looked across the street, but there was no sign of him anywhere. She sat down on a bench outside a closed shop to wait, hoping he'd come back. After roughly 10 minutes with no luck, she stood up. Where could he have gone? She wondered. She walked home with a heavy heart, constantly fearing his condition had gotten worse. In the days that followed, Amika went around looking for a new job. Her roof still leaked, and her savings were dwindling, but she never lost hope. One early morning, that same sleek black SUV pulled up outside Agatha's diner. 2 men in black suits stepped out, looking serious, and walked straight inside. The customers turned to stare. One server walked over to them. Good morning, gentlemen. Can I get you anything? The men spoke calmly. Does a woman named Amika work here? The server hesitated, then answered. She used to, but she got fired recently. The 2 men exchanged glances. Do you know where we can find her? The server shook her head. I don't, but someone else here might. She hurried into the kitchen to find the cook. Ma'am, 2 men out front are asking for Amika. The cook frowned. Amika? Why? They wouldn't say. The cook walked out to greet the visitors. Why are you looking for Amika? One of the men replied. Our employer wants to see her. She did him a huge kindness, and he wants to repay her. The cook fell quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly. I know where she lives. She gave them Amika's address. The men thanked her and headed back to their vehicle. Moments later, the SUV drove away. Around 11 o'clock the next morning, the luxury SUV arrived in Amika's neighborhood. The 2 suited men got out and walked into the residential area. A neighbor spotted them and asked, Who are you looking for? We're looking for Amika, they replied. She left home earlier this morning, the neighbor said. Just then, Amika walked back into the yard carrying a small bag. The neighbor pointed her out. That's her right there. The men walked over. Good morning, Amika replied cautiously. Our employer would like to speak with you, one man said. Amika frowned. Who is your employer? The men looked at each other. One pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. Amika opened it and read the contents, an invitation to a grand estate. She glanced at their vehicle and noticed a royal emblem on the license plate. Her heart skipped a beat. Am I in trouble? She asked nervously. Not at all, they assured her. They showed her their official IDs, explaining they were royal security guards. After hearing their explanation, Amika agreed to go with them. She went inside her house and changed into neat clothes, then stepped outside to leave. Her neighbor called over to her. If anything goes wrong, don't hesitate to call for help. Amika smiled faintly. I will. Thank you. She climbed into the SUV, and the car pulled away. The drive was long, over 4 hours total. Amika stared out the window the entire time, filled with questions. Finally, the SUV slowed down in front of towering grand gates. 4 fully armed royal guards stood on watch. One guard stepped forward and opened the gates, and the vehicle drove inside. Amika's eyes widened as she looked around. Magnificent buildings and lush gardens stretched out as far as she could see. This was clearly a royal palace. The SUV came to a stop. The men got out and opened the car door for Amika. She stepped outside and looked around. The person you're here to see is inside, they told her. They led her into a huge, elegantly decorated throne room. Amika froze in shock. Seated on the royal throne was a familiar face. She stared again, utterly disbelieving. It was Ogbonna, but he was nothing like the frail, homeless old man she'd met on the street. He looked completely different now, clean, strong, dignified, radiating regal grace. He stood up slowly, a gentle smile on his face. Welcome, child. Amika stepped back slightly, speaking slowly in shock. What is all this? Ogbonna gestured to a sofa. Please have a seat. Let me explain everything. Amika sat down, confused, and studied studied him closely, unsure what to expect. King Agbana sat across from her and looked at her for a few seconds before speaking. I never meant to trick you, but I had an important reason for pretending to be a poor man. I'm getting older, and one day I will step down from the throne. My only son, the heir to this kingdom, has just finished his studies overseas and will be coming home soon. Amika listened carefully as his tone turned serious. But I've been worried. My son has never brought a sincere young woman to meet me. Every woman around him only cares about the throne, wealth, and power. I don't believe any of them would make a worthy queen for him, or for our people, once he becomes king. That's why I made a choice. I disguised myself as a beggar and traveled to nearby towns to see how people would treat someone with nothing. I wanted to find a kind, virtuous woman, someone who looks past material things, someone willing to make sacrifices without expecting anything in return. True leadership always calls for sacrifice. He looked straight at Amika. I found no one worthy, until I met you. Amika stayed silent. Agbana continued. You helped me even when you thought I had nothing. You shared your food with me. You spent your hard-earned roof repair savings to buy medicine for a sick man you believed could never pay you back. You had no idea who I was, yet you chose kindness anyway. In that moment, I knew I'd found the person I'd been searching for. Amika spoke quietly. So you were never poor at all? Agbana shook his head. No, I am the king of this realm. Amika leaned back a little. I'm just a regular girl. I lost my parents when I was little. I never had a formal higher education. I'm nothing like royalty. Have you thought about the fact that your son and I might not get along? I doubt he even knows about this plan. He may not like me, and I may not like him either. Agbana smiled softly. Even if the two of you don't grow to care for each other, I'll leave it all to fate. I will still make sure you're cared for the rest of your life. He paused and added gently, I've learned your parents passed away when you were very young. If you don't wish to be with my son, I'd like to adopt you as my own daughter, if you'll let me. You'll live here in the palace, as the daughter I never had. You'll never have to work or struggle again. Amika knelt before the king to express her gratitude. Thank you, your majesty. King Agbana quickly helped her stand. Your good heart and selfless choices have earned you all of this. Amika stood slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you so much, your majesty. King Agbana smiled. Just keep that kind heart of yours, and that's all I ask. He glanced around the throne room thoughtfully. I'd like you to make this your home from now on. Amika nodded, smiling through her tears. King Agbana clapped his hands. At once, several maids walked into the room and bowed deeply. Take her to her chambers and help her freshen up, he ordered. The maids bowed again. Yes, your majesty. Amika followed the maids out of the room. She glanced back one last time and saw King Agbana watching her with a calm smile. A single question lingered in her heart. What kind of new life had she stepped into? And what would happen when the prince finally returned home? Days passed inside the palace, and Amika gradually adjusted to her new life and royal attire. The king assigned maids and royal guards to accompany her to the market for daily supplies, helping her get used to palace life. Everything felt strange at first, the enormous rooms, the attending maids, the ever-present guards, but little by little, she settled in. One morning, she was summoned by King Agbana. She walked into the throne room, and he looked at her calmly. Amika. She stepped forward and gave a slight bow. Good morning, your majesty. King Agbana said, my son will return to the palace tomorrow. Amika blinked in surprise. The prince? The king nodded. Yes. Amika bowed slightly. Very well, your majesty. Nerves stirred inside her. The next morning, the entire palace was filled with joy and celebration. Drums beat loudly, and the king held a grand homecoming ceremony for his son. Dancers performed, and people sang happily. Everyone gathered beneath decorated canopies in the palace courtyard. At last, a black car pulled through the main gates. The door opened, and a tall, poised young man stepped out. The crowd bowed respectfully as the drums grew louder. The prince walked forward and bowed before his father. Welcome home, my son, King Agbana said with a warm smile. Thank you, father, the prince replied. King Agbana then turned to Amika, who sat beside him. This is Amika, he introduced. And this is my son, Prince Ikena. Amika stood up and bowed politely. Good morning, Prince Ikena. The prince nodded. Good morning. Once the welcome ceremony ended, everyone headed back into the palace and gathered in the throne room. King Agbana asked Prince Ikena about his trip home. The journey went smoothly, Ikena answered. I hope the travel didn't wear you out. Not at all, father. The king chatted with his son, whom he hadn't seen in 4 long years. That night during dinner, King Agbana cleared his throat and turned to Ikena. Son, there's something I need to talk to you about. Prince Ikena wiped his mouth with a napkin and looked over. King Agbana continued. The young woman you met today is different from all the others. I tested her. Ikena frowned. Tested her? The king nodded and told him the whole story, how Amika had helped him when he disguised himself as a beggar, how she'd shared her meals with him day after day, and how she'd spent her life savings on medicine when he fell ill. That's why I brought her here. I want you to get to know her. I won't force either either of you into anything. Your duty as the future king is a heavy burden. You need a good woman by your side to stand with you and share that responsibility." The king's expression softened as he thought of his late wife. "Your mother, the late queen, was a kind and wise woman. She stood faithfully beside me when I first took the throne as a young king. Everything I've accomplished today is because I had someone like her at my side." He looked at Ikena with sincere gravity. "That's why I set out to find someone who has the true qualities of a queen, someone who can stand beside you, support you, and build a better future together, just as your mother did for me." Ikena looked down for a moment, then spoke. "Father, you really went through all of this?" King Agbana nodded. After a short silence, Ikena sighed. "All right, I'll get to know her." King Agbana smiled with relief. "That's all I ask." One evening, Amika was sitting in the palace gardens when Prince Ikena walked up to her. She greeted him politely. "May I join you?" the prince asked. "Of course, your highness." At first, they sat in silence. Then Ikena started a conversation. "Where are you from?" "A small town nearby," Amika answered, naming her hometown. Ikena nodded gently. "What was life like for you before you came here?" Amika let out a soft breath. "It was a constant struggle." Ikena fell quiet for a moment, studying her. "My father told me how the two of you met. Why did you help a total stranger?" Amika looked a little surprised by the question. "I just couldn't ignore his suffering," she said, then paused and went on. "I lost my parents when I was very young, so I know what it's like to go hungry and feel hopeless. If I'd been in his place, I would have hoped someone would show me kindness too." Ikena listened closely, then nodded in understanding. Slowly, the awkward tension between them faded away. They began to talk more openly. Their conversation started with simple questions and short answers, then soft, shy yet genuine smiles appeared on both of their faces. King Agbana watched them quietly from a distance, smiling to himself. Days turned into weeks, and Ikena and Amika grew closer with every passing day. What started as simple morning and evening greetings turned into long, heartfelt talks. Before long, they would chat for hours, losing track of time completely. One evening, Prince Ikena went to see his father. He spoke calmly but firmly, telling the king that he'd grown to admire Amika deeply and had truly fallen for her. He planned to talk to her privately to learn her feelings. If she felt the same, he wished to move forward with wedding plans. King Agbana listened, filled with immense joy. He encouraged his son to follow his heart and speak honestly to Amika. Soon after, Ikena confessed his true feelings to Amika. She listened quietly, then smiled and told him she felt the same way. When King Agbana heard the good news, he wasted no time announcing the royal wedding between his son, the prince, and Amika. Once again, the whole palace buzzed with preparations, this time, not for a homecoming, but for a blessed union that would start a brand new chapter. And so this beautiful story comes to its happy ending. Amika's journey teaches us that true kindness never goes unnoticed, even when it feels like no one is watching. Every good deed will eventually be rewarded. A pure heart, genuine compassion, and the courage to help others through tough times can open doors you never could have imagined. What did you think of this story? Have you ever received unexpected blessings from a simple act of kindness? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. More heartwarming and inspiring stories are coming soon. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and share it with your friends. Your support means the world to this channel. Thank you so much for watching.